Welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show, where we explore the fascinating world of real estate investing with your host, Patrick Switek. Patrick is a dynamic young entrepreneur and an accomplished real estate investor who's passionate about helping others achieve financial freedom. Each week, we sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals in the real estate industry and delve into their personal journeys, lessons learned, and secrets to their success. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Arthur Colker, welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show, man. I'm actually really pumped to have you on. I feel like we've known each other for 3 years, and I didn't realize as I was going through all the podcasts that I haven't had you on yet. So I kind of feel bad to have you on this late. But for the people that don't know who Arthur is the CEO of StayFi. StayFi is a platform that I'm sure he's going to explain further, but to my explanation, it's going to be a platform that helps you get emails and then actually be able to market those emails for direct bookings. They operate off of a model where they have these Wi-Fi routers where people would have to log in and get to enter their information in before they get access to the internet. And so you're capturing all of the guests that are in the house and their emails and their information so that you can later market to those emails and be able to convert them into direct bookings. So it's a big phenomenon. There's a lot of people that are going into direct bookings. It's an important aspect as people start getting less reliant on other platforms like Airbnb. But without further ado, I'll let Arthur explain that when he gets to it. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, and I don't take it personally. You haven't invited me on yet. It's okay.
He does take it personally, but it's okay. I'll let him go. No, but without further ado, I know you've done this plenty of times, but for the people that don't know you, let's get your side of the story. What were you doing prior to even getting into StayFi?
Yeah, so I worked in a variety of industries, but always from a marketing, especially digital marketing perspective. And actually, the last company I worked at, I ran digital marketing at a in-home elder care company. So very different than the hospitality industry in a lot of different ways. But kind of between that and StayFi, I started a digital marketing agency. And I worked with folks in a ton of different verticals, from wholesale artwork for like restaurants to furniture to B2B jewelry sales. And one of my clients just happened to be someone I knew from business school who ran a 100+ unit property management company called Heirloom. And he actually hired me to develop their brand and a strategy to drive direct bookings, as they were pretty much 100% Airbnb and Vrbo when they started working with me. And when I work with them, my kind of approach was, what is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of who we can market to directly to come back and stay with you? And the answer was the guests that already stayed and loved those properties. But what I found out is they actually had no access to any of the guest data for the people that stayed with them, because obviously it's not in Airbnb's interest to share that with you, right? Because they want to keep all their guests in their little pretty walled garden, and obviously don't want people figuring out about direct booking. So we actually looked at a ton of different ways to collect data from guests. And the one that we kept coming back to was, how do we place something in the guest journey that everyone is going to go through, booker and non-bookers, where we could seamlessly capture that data? And the answer was through the Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. So at first, I just went out and looked at all the systems that you've already experienced at a cafe, Starbucks, airports, hotels. And it just happened that those systems don't work in single-family homes. Not economically, not with the hardware they used, not the subscription model. It all kind of didn't fit well for our use case. So I thought to myself, this is actually an interesting space, and I wonder if I could jerry-rig something that at least did the basic functionality of what we wanted. And that's really how StayFi was born.
Wow. So I knew it was inspired somewhat by Starbucks. So I know, like, every time you go to Starbucks, they ask for your email. And I was always wondering, I'm like, why do you need my email to be able to log into the Wi-Fi? But now, obviously, after being in the space, it makes sense, right? To gather my email so they can market to me. Curious, with StayFi, What's what's the experience like for users that come to a property that has StayFi installed?
Well, today, you mean like the guests?
Correct.
Yeah, so today we have a few different products. So obviously we have the Wi-Fi collection piece, but now we also have some guest engagement and marketing tools that are also built into the platform. So I'll kind of give you the whole view of StayFi if you were to use all of our features. The first thing actually starts before you even arrive at the property. We now have a pre-arrival messaging feature that sends a message through your property management software, or most of the ones that we work with now. And the reason we have that is we have a new-ish product called Homepage, which is like a link tree for each one of your listings. So it's essentially a website where you can have all the essential links you'd want to share with guests, things like a guidebook, book this property again, your website, and most importantly, links to upsells, of which we have two partners built in the Hostco and Viator, which can enable you to sell things like early check-in. That's definitely the big one, as well as recommend tours and activities where you get a rev share. So now you can send that homepage in advance to the booker through your property management software. So let's say
Mhm.
you booked, 8 people to go to Joshua Tree. You, Patrick, would receive this message from your property manager saying like, hey, here's a link to all the information you need about the property, especially if you want to book, you know, early arrival or early check-in, you can do that here. Then, once all the guests arrive at the property, they will join at some point the guest network. So, across a portfolio of homes, we typically have just one guest network name for all properties. So, it would be something like property manager guest network or luxury vacations guest or whatever you want it to be. When the guest joins that on their device, a branded splash page specific for that home will pop up. On it, we will always have name and email, but you can also collect phone number for text marketing. You can collect birth date. You can make sure that they're 18. We have these check boxes to consent to email and text marketing. So you use the guest to enter that information. You hit connect. Then you get taken to that homepage, like I mentioned before. So again, it's another place to market your guidebook and upsells. And then you're good to go on that device for 30 days. So if you did have two devices, you would log in once on each. But essentially, once you log in, your device is authorized. Then if you used our text and email tools, you would receive a text and email immediately. So in your inbox, you would get a welcome email from your property manager, and we have these pre-built templates for welcome email automations where we kind of pre-build the email for you and then you can finesse it for your own brand. But it's essentially an introduction to you as a property manager. Explain that you're not quote unquote Airbnb or whatever OTA they book through. Let you have those links to the guidebook to your homepage, and then potentially provide an offer off a future direct booking as well. So you get that email, you'd also get a text message that would say, hey, welcome to XYZ Rentals to this property. Here's a link again to that upsell homepage. So now you have all the information on your phone, in your email. Enjoy your stay. Maybe you book one of the tours and activities, and the property manager gets 8% of that. And then once you leave the property, I hope that you've set up your post-departure email as well through StayFi, so you can get an email 10 days later, 30 days later, again pushing you to rebook. And you also might receive a text message to review your stay from StayFi. And if you were to rate us 5 stars, it would ask you to review you on Google. And if you got less than 5 stars, you could leave some private feedback for the property manager as well. And then you'd hopefully be enrolled in the newsletter every 30 days so that when you were planning your next trip to Joshua Tree, you would remember that booking direct would be cheaper or have some extra type of benefit.
Amazing. And you can also with that message would only go to the booker, right? It wouldn't go to all the other guests.
Which the post stay stuff or
The
the
post-stay
first
stuff
message? Oh, the post stay stuff should go to everybody.
should go to everybody. So everybody has a chance to review, but like Airbnb, not everyone can review, right?
Yeah, so the post stay review text, or you can actually ask them to review you during the stay as well. That's meant to drive 5-star reviews on non OTA platforms. So
Got it.
the main one people want is Google Business because if you
Got it.
get more 5-star reviews in your Google Business page, it helps you in SEO. Also, when people Google you, you'll see that right on the right
Management.
side of, this short-term rental management company has, 500 5-star reviews, and it really ups the authority of your direct booking website.
Oh, absolutely. That's awesome. I think the credibility piece was something I didn't even think about with an SEO as well helps with like if somebody searches for managers in the area, like it's just nice from a lead gen perspective that you're going to have more authority there as well. So I actually really like that.
Yeah, a lot of the effects or impacts we have a spillover onto the owner acquisition side if you are a property manager.
Mhm.
One, I actually see some folks do this, which is pretty cool, who are like real estate agents and property managers. They'll like give you a rebate or a big credit if you end up purchasing a home with them, which obviously they would then probably manage, as well as advertising their property management service like on the homepage or in all their marketing. And then obviously things like Google reviews are also going to help a lot on the authority side as a credible property manager.
Well, you could do value stacking, right? Like you can, for example, like example with the realtor, right? Like if somebody's coming to Joshua Tree, right? There's probably a really good chance that that person is a specific guest avatar, and that specific guest avatar has other things that would interest them, and one of which would be, if you're visiting an area, there's probably a high probability that you would like to buy a place in that area, right? And
Especially if you
so
visit there often. I'd say people that visit a certain area often are the people that often convert into vacation rental owners.
So, Arthur, curious, is there a way to track that in your system that somebody showed up 5 times to your homes or 5 times, whatever, to be able to flag them as somebody to push a specific campaign like a realtor campaign?
It's not super easy. It's not like built for you to easily do
Got
that,
it.
but you can figure it out. So it's one of those areas where one of our big focuses, which are kind of want to pivot to like what we're going to launch in 2025,
Mhm.
is more, I would call it like smart segmentation. So you can segment your list in StayFi any number of hundreds of ways. But I sometimes think the plethora of options is actually sometimes not helpful unless if you're very sophisticated and know exactly what you want to do. So for us, a lot of the way we've been improving at least like the front end email templates is kind of how do we go very prescriptive in terms of, you should send this message at this time because this works best for 99% of people. And similarly, we want to do that with the segmentation of guest data being like, hey, there's a lot of ways you could do this, but one really great category is people that have stayed with you X plus number of times, right?
I love that. And I love how you're alluding to the aspect. Have you ever been to, I don't know, like Cheesecake Factory? Have you been to Cheesecake
I
Factory
have been
before?
to a cheesecake factory, yes,
Do
but
you
not
know how
recently.
Me neither. But do you
Yes.
know when you go there and you're overwhelmed with options because they have like every cuisine possible? That's kind of how it feels when you have too many features that like you really don't know what to use because you're just overwhelmed with the options of things you can do. I think simplifying that is definitely a really cool because you alluded to like, hey, 99% of people would have value from this segmentation or super segmentation. Like
Yeah.
that would be really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of our approach in general, especially with email and text marketing is, you know, we're going to present something because we've done a lot of user testing and feedback, and a lot of our operators are sub 20 units who don't have a marketing person, right? Who don't
Mhm.
have specialized roles and maybe are doing everything themselves for the most part with some VAs or, part-time help, things like that. For that user, it has to be pretty much plug and play, one click, fiddle with the copy if you want to change it because you have some personal preference. But everything we do in that arena is simple. But then in the back, if you want to go in and do the completely customized template and change the HTML and do all this more sophisticated thing because you are a marketing expert, we have that layer too. But we definitely
Got
have
it.
this kind of simple layer for the small PM or owner operator who, they're doing 100 things and it has to be extremely straightforward and easy, or else they're not going to do email marketing. And that's just what we found.
Wow, interesting. Because the small operators are not, it has to be simplified. Otherwise, like they don't understand how marketing works, so they're not going to be a power
And
user
it
of the
may not
platform.
even be their full time job. We have those customers.
Yeah.
So for them, it has to be like, oh, yeah, I do need to send an email every month. Click, click. It goes out. It has a good, template and copy, and we've imported the images already for you. And it's pretty much ready
Plug
to
and play.
be sent out whenever you want.
I mean, to be honest, I'm really lazy, so that would work for me too. So, I mean, do you have a lot of, just kind of pivoting, do you have a lot of clients that are over like 100 units or stuff like that? Like, do you have a lot of those kind of clients, or is that somebody you target? Like, I'm just curious, like what your customers are usually that work
Yeah,
with StayFi.
I think we are kind of unique in that we built it in a way that we really service the whole continuum of property manager size from one listing to 500 plus. And one of the ways we did that is making with the platform very open. So when you're dealing with, not dealing with, but when you're working with somebody who has 500 plus listings,
I
they
know we're
probably
tough to
have a,
deal with. I'm kidding.
yeah,
I have 100.
yes. I mean, you're not dealing with one person, you're dealing with a team of people,
No,
A.
for sure.
And B,
Yeah.
they might have consultants and they might have very strong preferences of, we're going to use these marketing platforms. So at StayFi, even though we have email, we have text, and we have the Wi-Fi tool, we don't force you to use these things together. So we may have a customer who they have an outside agency running email, but they have 300 properties, and for them, they're really focused on data collection. So we're going to collect the emails, we're going to validate that they're real, we will reject fake ones, and then we will just push it with all the information they want into MailChimp or HubSpot. But on the flip side, we even have customers that only use email and don't use Wi-Fi because they are collecting data other ways, usually ways that are not going to collect the same percentage of data, but they still have a decent amount. And for them, the email tool is very compelling. So it's all kind of like, a menu, and you can pick which things kind of fit your business model. And that way we kind of can plug into such a variety of tech stacks versus other platforms where it's kind of like you got to get the whole thing or nothing.
It's all in one. Yeah, so you can purchase by section, like whatever your business needs, that portion you can pay for. And I think you
Exactly.
alluded to this at one point that let's throw them under the bus. MailChimp is more expensive than your platform, right? Like yours
Yeah,
is
so
way
if you
cheaper.
just want to do email marketing with the data that you already have, and what's cool about StayFi is we actually, when we integrate with your software, your PMS, we will go and find any email you've ever collected through
Mhm.
there. So you may already have a decent amount of data. Some PMS too have tools to get the email of the booker from any OTA. So some we find have a little more data than others, just depending on how you set it up. So in that case, you can just use that data and then upload your own list. And then you're going to get an email marketing tool that has specific templates and automations for our space, but then also is less expensive than probably the one you're using today.
Wow. So let's say that somebody like me, right? We're working together right now on integrating all of the properties that we have. Curious, day one, if I get in right as a client, do I reap the benefits? Let's say I'm like super late to the game. Can I still reap the benefits of having like, because you alluded to getting past emails from past guests? Can you get like Airbnb emails and all that, like the true email from Airbnb, or do you have that redirected forwarded email that they
It
provide?
depends what PMS you use and how you set it up. So, like OwnerRez, for instance, they have a very cool form that they send to bookers to collect emails. And so
Mm.
those folks typically actually have a lot of emails from their Airbnb guests if they set up that feature. Other property management softwares don't have that. So, today we connected someone's Guesty account. They had 5,000 emails that were already ready to use for marketing. That's just going to depend on the source of your bookings, how many
Mhm.
were Airbnb, and if you had any other methodology to collect some of that information.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense. It seems like most are Airbnb for our market. It's like 95%. So there's that. But that's cool. That's good to know. Now, granted, okay, so you have the collection aspect. You have the messaging aspect pre and post stay. You have the email campaigns. Is there anything that we're missing that your platform offers?
There are some other things that are, definitely beneficial. Things like occupancy alerting, which is a concern for some folks. So we actually count unique guests in property, not just devices, and we compare that to the current reservation. And then we also do Wi-Fi monitoring just from like an online offline outage alerting standpoint. I do find that a lot of clients too that are getting a lot of Wi-Fi questions about like passwords and logins, and they're having their routers are like being reset and they're going back to the factory set information which they don't have. One nice thing is when you have StayFi across your whole portfolio is you end with one set of Wi-Fi instructions for all homes. So it is very nice from just a guest communication standpoint that no matter what property they're staying in, you have one set of instructions. So you're just like, hey, join brand name guest network with a password, or even not with a password if you want to keep it as simple as possible. And then you can let anybody use the Wi-Fi and collect their information.
Got it. Got it. Now, what's like let's take it back, right? Collection stuff is obviously, for at least for me, is the most interesting, and of course like the back end app marketing is great, but you first got to collect the emails before you even get to the marketing piece, right? So from a marketing collecting email standpoint, that so how many do you usually get a week, a month? Like, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but it depends, I'm assuming. But
It's
how many,
80
like,
to
what's
90% of adult guests. So if you have a reservation for 10, I'd expect 8 to 9 real emails from this day.
so
Obviously, though,
80%?
you will collect more if you market your Wi-Fi better. So if you prominently display, the name of the network and include the correct name of the network in all your guest communication, you'll get like the highest possible yield rate. Of that, typically the 70 to 90% of those people will opt in. So from a group of 10, you'd probably end up with 7 to 8 emails that you can market to. Text opt-in is lower. It's going to be more like 3 to 4 phone numbers that you can then do for text marketing, which is also very effective, especially if you have availability and are in a drive to market. We see a lot of people
Mm.
do like, someone cancels next weekend. You can send out a text and an email, that you have this availability. So some of the new automated as well as kind of one-click templates we're building today are all about matching supply and demand. As in, you can specify a date range in your calendar, and then we will pull in the properties and availability for that date range and then market those specific dates and properties in your email. Because a lot of people, when you have less than 10 properties, next month, if it's a busy season, you may only have like two bookable windows across two properties. So let's just market exactly what you can sell and see if we can find and match that with any demand on the direct booking side through your email list.
Ooh, okay. I was gonna ask questions about that, but you're kind of diving in, so let's just get into it. So, what's the effectiveness of broad versus direct style marketing? So, broad meaning, hey, there's a seasonal, oh, it's Christmas time, get your bookings in today, blah blah blah. Versus, okay, hey, we have this slot available, book it today. What have you found is the
I mean, I
effectiveness of
definitely
either?
recommend a combination of both, but it really, really depends on your market and who your guest persona is, and how, when, and how they typically book, and kind of what is your overall strategy. So I'll give a kind of a few examples to make this more realistic. So let's say there is a time of year that's like your high season where you're going to be booked through the OTAs no matter what. So, like, how can you leverage your email list to make that time of year more profitable? Something I see some people do is for 1 month, whatever your booking window is, for like the first month, you only offer those dates on your website. So you go back to your list, say, hey, you're coming back to Joshua Tree this year for this month. Like for the first month, you can only book on our website because our general assumption about how people do pricing in the space is that as dates approach, prices go down because they want to like increase their occupancy rate and sell those dates. So getting bookings directly and further out is probably going to yield like the best rate and most profitable type of booking because you obviously have less OTA fees. So that's like one approach is I'm just going to preference direct bookings first and then OTAs follow to fill in the rest of the calendar, right? So that's how I'm going to leverage my list. The inverse of that is kind of more the other approach of we're going to look at like what's coming up in the very short term and try to fill those before we even cut rates further in OTAs or those nights go on like not booked. So I think like both are great approaches to mix together. The other thing to keep in mind is just the importance of billboarding in someone's inbox, because the reality is for most people, vacation rental purchase in most markets is not a frequent item, and it's a pretty considered spend. And maybe something they only do once or twice a year. So at that point, the amount of time that they're in market, like what's the percentage of the year that you're like in market to purchase a vacation rental in X destination? If you want to go there this year, it's very small, you know? It may be like
Yeah.
a week or two. So you really just have to be persistent so that like when the person is in market to purchase a trip, that they remember A, that they should book, they remember your brand, and B, they need to remember the value prop. So that's why whatever your value proposition is for direct booking has to be communicated in just about every communication you have. For most people, that is some type of price advantage. That's definitely like where most people are situated in the industry. Some more creative folks have done other types of differentiation, whether it's guaranteed early check-in, late checkout, amenity basket, you get a golf trip, whatever, right? There are other things I see people doing, but definitely for most people, it's just that in every communication, make sure you're driving home the booked and direct and save message so that they remember your brand and remember the reason to book. And those two things are just what you have to keep top of mind in like every single message you're sending, and you should be trying to do something at least every month.
Love that. Okay, so now thinking about that, the use cases that you mentioned, what in terms of just like, is there any data that you have around what's the most effective models for, or most common models that work for 99% of people in their markets? Like what kind of content is in that marketing, or is that already featured? Like you already have templates on?
Yeah, we have
Um,
templates, but I'd say if you kind of are like, I don't know what to do, and you don't have the wherewithal to like do a blog, because a lot of people they try to do SEO. This is a bit of a
mhm,
side. A lot of people are
mhm.
like, I'm gonna write blog content and do SEO, and then they get no traffic and they give up because that's very hard. Like the other ways to generate direct bookings relatively are quite challenging, and you typically have to be quite big and have good resources to achieve, i.e., ranking first in Google or the top three in your destination for vacation rentals. Typically, going to have to be larger and invest a good amount in SEO. The only other space that I see people very successful at small scale is social media if you're very savvy, i.e., you're telling the story of how you're setting up your first social media, first vacation rental, and it's interesting or unique, or you're doing a renovation, or it's a tree
Yeah.
house, or a bubble house, or a barn,
Mhm.
or that those kind of things. You can build enough awareness on social media to get all your bookings directly for the whole next year. So that's like a bit of an outlier, right? That's not going to work for most people. But that's, kind of like the two ways I see people having a lot of success. And the third one is obviously where we help, which is we're going to build a loyal audience, and we just need to get every 6 months or every year a high, some percentage of your list to come back and rebook, because that will just compound over time. Where this year it was
Mhm.
10%, and the next year 20% will come directly, and then it'll be 40, and that just will grow as your audience grows. And then you'll end up like a lot of the more mature customers we work with who've been operating for 10 years, who have already had 30,000 emails in their database. They're already at 60% of all their bookings are direct, right? So that's kind of like we're accelerating this natural process we see larger PMs have in these kind of classic vacation rental markets. We're going to accelerate that for you, because instead of taking 10 years, it will only take 2 or 3 to be majority direct. So that's kind of like the end goal objective.
Yeah.
Now to go back to your original question, which was about like content and what to put in the emails, definitely number one is the consistent value prop about why to book. If there's no reason, guests are going to choose OTAs because they're comfortable with them, right? Especially if they've never booked direct before. So you just need that reason. And for 99% of people, it's going to be price. Some folks I see even like markup Airbnb. Once you kind of are like doing really well with direct booking, some people even drive a bigger fork, a bigger wedge, and just upcharge Airbnb list rates even higher. Because for like the pain of Airbnb, I'm going to charge even a higher premium, right? The second is there's a lot of basic things that you could cover in an email. That would be local events is obviously a big one. So just having a calendar of what's happening, music, festival, different, art festival, jazz fest. I'm sure if you look up local events, you can find 5 or 6 things. You can add those to your content calendar. And the other one is new property announcements. If you're a PM, people love real estate. They love seeing interesting homes. So featuring different properties is another great one. And then the third one could be really good as kind of like your story. If you're a smaller PM or an owner operator, people can be very connected to like the story of you and your family, and this is very personal, and it's not a generic Airbnb. And so that's another thing to feature both like in a welcome email and then kind of like build
Mhm.
that content over time. And then the fourth is like you can just feature homes and properties and a deal. So people always love some type of offer. So that's also a great way to track effectiveness of emails is using types of promo codes just because it's very easy to track back to specific campaigns if you do offer promo codes. Promo codes are also good if like you end up keeping your direct booking rates a little closer to OTA rates, then you have a little bit more like I can send out a 10% coupon and we're still hitting what we want to hit. So that's just another idea for, making sure your content is high value.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate because this
Mm-hmm.
is stuff that we see and I'm sure you're up for the challenge. So now there's a lot of talk about in my market specifically, Airbnb is a it's a heavy Airbnb market. There's a lot of talk that if you start doing OTAs, or sorry, you start doing direct bookings, then Airbnb will see that you're doing other platforms and will disincentivize you in the algorithm. So they'll push you deeper down because they see that you're using other platforms as opposed to their own. So they're just coming in as blocks. Is that true? I'm curious on your take on that.
The only effect that I am aware of is
Yeah.
if you are really pushing what I call billboarding on your listing, as in you're like photoshopping in the logo and name of your company and all the screens, and you make it very clear as far as you can push it that you have like a website, etc. If the conversion rate on your listing page goes down, they definitely will not favor you as much, right? Just because they want, when someone comes to your listing page, they want to have properties that convert at the highest at that point. In terms of them looking at, do you have a Verbo listing or do you have a direct booking website and downranking you, I haven't heard that much.
Mhm.
I don't really think that's really would align with their business objective because they want to get the most bookings. So you think they would want to feature the highest rated, most likely to convert properties highest up in their algorithm to
Or
yield the highest amount
incentivize,
of revenue for them.
no, it makes sense. Or incentivize people to only book on Airbnb and only use Airbnb so that when you don't use other OTAs because they're feeding you and they're keeping you happy and so they want more bookings. You could also make that argument.
Yeah, but I would say Airbnb doesn't, they're not as aggressive as like Verbo at least, and now if Expedia has a loyalty program,
Mhm.
there's like some addition, like they have like additional reason to book there, not elsewhere. Airbnb still hasn't given the guests any extra value to book direct, really, other than maybe like forcing you to adhere to their like cancellation and kind of more guest favorable policies in general if there's a dispute. So, from our standpoint, I understand you might be concerned of if I focus on other platforms, maybe my performance in Airbnb will just go down because I'm focused on my Verbo listing and my direct website, etc. I don't think the trade off, I think the trade off is more beneficial to lower your Airbnb dependence over time because they could make all sorts of unilateral changes not in your favor, regardless of whether you're diversifying your strategy or not.
Yeah, got it. That's well put. Cool. So let's say gathering emails, right? Now, this is this is where it gets very interesting. And I bet you nobody has asked. You've been in a lot of these pods, but I'm gonna throw some curveballs at you. Okay, Arthur, you ready for this?
Okay.
Well, I buy and sell management companies, right? I haven't sold one yet, but I buy a lot, and I'm I'm definitely interested in the idea of will having emails add value to your management company? Will have like if you have, let's say I sell my management company and I have 50,000 emails from luxury properties in that market, I have a feeling that that would add value to the management company. No?
Well, I think it's not necessarily just having the emails, it's having that
What do you
reflect
do
in
with
your
it?
P&L because you should
Yeah.
have a higher ADR than your competitors. You should have a higher both occupancy and rates potentially, and you should be paying less in OTA fees. So it should really play out, I think, in the financials of how you're valued, as opposed to just, anyone could have you could have 50,000 emails and do nothing with it. Then I don't think it's going to help you that much, right?
Right. And I think
Unless
I
if
think maybe
somebody had a lot, unless if your acquirer was like, I could take this and really monetize it. But that's the other thing you have to remember is having a stale list is pretty much as good as having no list. So if you're like collecting emails and you don't reach out to them or don't use an automation, which is like when you sign up for StayFi email, the first thing we do is
welcome email.
set up an automation because we kind of know that if we don't push you to set up an email that's going to get sent no matter what, you might just not send any emails. And then when you do send one, people don't remember who you are and unsubscribe, right? So we're like definitely push that hard, right? So it's all
Smart.
about consistency. And then I think you will see it play out in how you're valued. I'm sure if you talk to Jacoby from C to G and one company was 90% direct booking, had a 200,000 email list, they're going to look more profitable than somebody who has the same size who was 100% Airbnb and didn't have a direct booking website.
Yeah, I could see that because of obviously the fees and all that, but also I've seen, like for example, I know this one property in my market that has they don't have StayFi per se, but they have a really good social media presence, and their home just goes viral all the time. It's just a viral home, and they're doing higher numbers than any other two bedrooms are, and I think it's because of the fact that they it's got a cave pool. It's like very Instagrammable, and they're driving all of their traffic from Instagram. So like every time that a post goes viral, they just have a bunch of bookings come in. And so it's just, like they're more willing to pay higher rates because of the I feel like they're not going through the options, they're going to yours so you can charge a higher rate. Otherwise, I have to lower the rates to be able to fill the books, especially if it's closer to the lead time, right? So it's just an interesting just
Yeah,
thought
I mean the
there.
general
So
idea from us is more demand will always yield higher occupancy and higher rates. So you should just think of, you have for most operators, if they're set up on Airbnb, Verbo, and maybe Booking, if it makes sense in their market, it's really the email and the audience you develop is just one more demand source that should like the rising tide should lift all boats because if you're achieving higher occupancy book further out then your rates even on your other types of bookings should also benefit
mm,
because you're having more demand across all four platforms in aggregate.
mm, got it.
That kind of
So
stuff is very hard to measure. So,
it is.
but that's kind of like the general the hypothesis there.
Yeah, but it would be reflected in your P&L at the end of the day. I do agree with that. So that's very interesting. But I also would argue that, and I do believe this, there are people that will look at lists like that and think value stack. I think the value stack is like such a good play. The idea of, hey, look, this management company, maybe I would buy this management company and pay a premium because I know as a realtor I can double dip on this list and maybe even triple dip if I buy and sell. So if you do the buy, the sell side, and do the management, now you have three revenue streams right off the bat because you have a list of 50,000 people that have gone to the area. And I feel like there's power to that, right? Or let's say I'm a solar company, right? Having a list of people that go to Joshua Tree is probably pretty strong considering. I don't know. I'm thinking like out loud, like what industries would be interested in a list like that, other than the
Yeah, I mean, at
realtors.
least for a lot of our customers, they include a lot of people include their brand and ability to drive bookings in their owner pitch. So at least at a
Mm.
minimum,
Yep.
it's a differentiation from other property managers, especially if you are in like a more luxury segment and you could be like, hey, we have, you know, a list of people that spent X dollars on a vacation in your area as
Wait,
opposed to
can you gather that data? Like how much people like the booking values, does that cross over in the CRM according to the email? Like is that
again,
coded?
something we're working on right now, but
Okay,
very soon, yes.
that's awesome.
But it's all there. Again,
Mhm.
it's just kind of like surfacing it in the right way. But yeah, so every
Yeah.
person we collect the data, we will match it with a booking. It's not like we can't know. Sometimes someone logs to the Wi-Fi and like there's no booking right now, so we don't understand who this person is. And they're like, maybe it's like a cleaner. We have no idea, right? But if we
Yeah.
have a login during a booking, then we can
High
associate that
probability.
guest with the booking, and then we know how much
Mhm.
the booking cost, and so we have a general idea of, both who the booker was and also who the ancillary guests are and what they were willing to pay.
Interesting. So you can match that,
Mm-hmm.
who the booker was through the PMS data. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. Then so you can run data analysis and use that data to be able to sell owners and basically say, hey, listen, the average buyer on this list spends $1,000 a stay, like
Or more, yeah.
or
Yeah,
more, or let's
yeah.
say whatever.
You have segments,
That's
right?
that's huge. You could just be
Totally.
like, well, guys, this is valuable when you can sell that the idea to a homeowner that these are luxury clients are staying in these homes. I like that play a lot. Cool. So there's that. Thank you for that. Arthur, I want to ask you, what does the future hold for StayFi? What are you, I mean, you alluded to some of the items already, but I just wanted to hear from you just like concrete, deeper. What are you trying to build with StayFi in the future?
Yeah, there's like a few areas that we group stuff in. One we talked a lot about, which is kind of CRM and guest marketing, how to make it smarter, easier, more automated, integrate more artificial intelligence. I think we touched on a lot of those things and we're
Mhm.
like going down the roadmap. The second is Wi-Fi tooling. You know about some things we're working on that are still a little bit under wraps, but basically new Wi-Fi tools to capture data and more types of properties that we want to work with. Right now, we sell one particular brand of hardware, but we want to work with more. So we work with two
Mhm.
brands right now, Ubiquiti and Ruckus, but we want to work with more brands so we can service more properties at a lower cost. So just making the Wi-Fi service more accessible is another big priority. And the
Arthur,
yes,
sorry, I have to, I'm cutting you off, but I have to say that was a big, because we've known each other for 3 years.
yeah,
And I always told you, I was like, listen, Arthur, I love the idea of the routers, but keep in mind, man, I have 100 properties and I get, you know, X percent of, let's say 20, 25% of the revenue upside, but I have to spend the full amount for the Wi-Fi router, which is like 200 something. I don't know exactly what it is now, but across the whole portfolio of 100, that's 20 grand. Like that's a huge investment that I would have to make as a property manager. So it's, which I'm
well, I will
sure
say a
some
lot of
do.
people do charge some fees or pass some portion of the
Yeah,
cost on to owners. Obviously, that's
correct.
very market dependent. You're in a very competitive market where you probably don't want to,
You can't
you can't rub
rock
people
the
the
boat.
wrong way. But other people are, they're monopolist operators in their market and they have all sorts of fee structures that are very interesting. Or they charge like a marketing fee or a hardware fee or they buy the lock and the StayFi and some other device and they charge them $600, whatever, right? So it's not to say, and then a lot of people obviously think StayFi is that amazing and will pay for the whole thing themselves, and they still have tremendous ROI, and we have like payment plans, and you can pay over 24 months or whatever, right? So we try to make we have all sorts of ways to make the Wi-Fi as accessible as possible, but working on new and exciting ways to reach more people with that. And the last one, which is the most interesting, that I'll be the most vague,
Mhm.
is kind of if you are willing as a property manager, how can you work with other property managers to cross promote your brand to more guests to book direct? And I think that's
Mm,
that's one of the most interesting ones in that there's a lot of advantages in our space for and a lot of opportunity, I'd say, for collaboration, right? So if you think of kind of like property managers and owners versus Airbnb, how can we work together as an industry to keep building awareness around direct
Yeah.
booking and have a little more power in what seems like a very one-sided equation where there is one increasingly dominant OTA that's setting all the rules and the rest are struggling to maintain their market share, and how can we just empower people to take a little more ownership back over their business? So that's kind of like the big last theme for us in 2025.
Arthur, you just dropped a mic drop slash. You just did a cliffhanger, and it's funny because we're recording November 21st, but it's probably going to be released closer to the end of the year. So wow, you just dropped a cliffhanger at the end of the
We'll have
year.
to wait a little longer for some of these things, but definitely
Yeah.
Q1, Q2 of 2025, we're gonna roll out some new cool things, and then other stuff towards the end of next year, which is kind of already crazy that we've already like our roadmap for next year is pretty much baked. So it's just execution.
Isn't that like the full battle execution?
Yes, prioritizing what to do when you can think of 40 things that would be awesome and you can only do
Yeah,
three. That's also a challenging process, especially for us
got
because
it.
we're not a VC backed company. We're very lean and mean and efficient, and that's how we're going to keep things. So for us, the prioritization battle is a fun one.
Yeah, feature creeping is a real thing. People probably give you features every day. And so you just got to make sure that that aligns with the vision and mission of what you're trying to build, and also to the core majority of the people that actually would benefit from those features. So,
Yes, we do not build things for one
oof,
for one person. Let me just say that. And I see, that's definitely, it's kind of echoes across all types of businesses. I'm sure, you have owners that need
mhm,
you to do something one way and they're the only one. It's kind of, you know, it's
difficult.
maybe as a founder and owner of a business, you think it might be worthwhile, but especially for employees, it can be very grating if they're jerking them around to, try to please one person and setting them off their priorities, right? So we try to keep everything pretty locked down and focused on what our clear goals are.
Yep. And I think two different common things that happen within the property management field, short-term rental property management. One is, hey, I have this other property in another market that you don't manage in that I want you to take on. That's a popular one.
Yeah.
And that's hard because that's revenue associated with that. And then the other one is like just how we go about like fee structure or like accounting structure. I'm like, I'm not gonna like there's like this one that was like, well, it's 20% until X number. And then after the X number, we'll do 25, but only on the amount that's over it. So if it's $2,000
So it's
and
like
it
a
goes over by
success bonus
$100,
for you.
yeah, like I have to do like $100 and I have to do that times 25% only on the $100. I'm like, where are you getting this? And it was like, yeah, this is standard. I'm like, where? Where is the standard? I don't understand this. Anyways, but it's funny how homeowners know more than me. But who knows? I've been managing longer, but I guess they're just more knowledgeable than me. I'm off my soapbox, Arthur. This is about you. We're gonna wrap it up. Last three questions. First question: what educational resource was most influential or contributing to the success that you've had in your life? It does not have to be real estate related.
Oh yeah. When I was in business school, we had so this is not a resource, it was like a talk, but I guess that
Yeah.
counts, right? We had this I had took like this entrepreneurship class and was mostly like whatever. And then we had this one guest speaker who was a woman who was a founder of a company called Blackline, which does like closing the books for accounting, something very niche.
Mhm.
And she just gave this very inspirational talk about how she founded and started a business where it was, I found an underserved niche. There was no one doing this. No one gave me money. I bootstrapped. I was an engineer. Blah 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 blah. And now, the happiest moment of her life is when like SAP and Oracle launched like competing products. So they meant like what she was doing had validity. And she I think is still running the company, hasn't exited. Basically, the story of how to be an entrepreneur and build a software company without taking venture capital, which is really the kiss of death for 90% of people.
So that inspires you to do the bootstrap model, which by the way, I have raised money before and it was fucking hell and I hated the pressure. And I've also worked for early stage startups, also a lot of pressure, They pushed us to fabricate numbers. It was just crazy. Not fabricate numbers, but it was a lot of pressure to like, how do we make these numbers look good? Like it's
A,
crazy
a lot
with
of founders
runway
just
and all that.
don't realize like how the preference stack works. So even when you
Yes,
raise, a Series A, Series B, and then if you're not on your
dilutable.
way to an IPO and you get acquired for 50 million, you still end up with zero because everyone else gets paid before you that invested. So you just have to achieve 10 times as much. And your probability, I'm not, maybe if I was 23, I would take the VC money and try that
Yeah.
once. But at this point, it's kind of like, I don't know how many software companies do I want to start? And so, I was very inspired about just an alternative ways, and especially one, I think, it's like you see all the headlines and TechCrunch and Verge and on
Mhm.
Twitter or X of, oh,
It's
so and so
sexy.
raised this money, and you feel like,
Mhm.
wait, am I doing the wrong thing? But I think you just have to kind of know what your right path for yourself is.
I mean, if it fails, the valuation's zero. So, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, what is it cash flowing? Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that. I bootstrapped. Well, hold on. I bought a management company, but I bootstrapped in the sense that I haven't raised money for like, yeah. Anyways, for equity or something like that. Anyways, cool. Second question, or hold on. Second question: Do you love what you do at StayFi? Is this what you thought your life was going to come to? That's I'm
I
curious
do
about
love
that.
what I do, but definitely not what I thought my life would come to. But I think
Interesting.
my mentality has always been I don't really plan that far in advance. And I'm very attuned to like following my instinct about like what seems right in the next move in my career and being open to new opportunities. So that's just kind of been my approach in general. And I really think that's worked out for me. It's just kind of, even when I had but just to give more context, when I had my marketing consulting, my goal was to start a software company by discovering a problem. So I was just like, I need to get in front of as many companies as I can and learn about as many industries as I can because
Mm,
my thought was like you have to understand the industry to some degree to like be able to start a software company in the space, whether you operate in the space or you work with somebody in that space.
that I love that. There's so many of my friends that really want to be founders and they're just trying to scrap at problems. I'm like, you have to exposure. Like you need more
Yes.
exposure to
Yes.
problems. Yeah, I love that. And then the last one for people that want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you? Where can they find you? Arthur, give it away.
Well, I say two things. One, if they're interested in StayFi in general, definitely go to stayfi.com and book a demo or sign up and just use the product because it's self-service as well. So you can learn more or just get started. If you're interested in contacting me, you can email me at arthur@stayfi.com or just connect with me on LinkedIn. I do get 10,000 LinkedIn connections from salespeople, but as long as you're not obviously, selling IT developer services in Eastern Europe, I'm probably going to recognize that you're an industry person and accept your connection.
I feel the same way
Yeah.
for other things. Awesome. Well, thanks, Arthur. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for hopping on and sharing your knowledge. StayFi is awesome. Excited to see what 2025 brings.
Sweet. Thanks, Patrick.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Patrick Real Estate Show. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a follow and leave us a 5-star review. Your support truly means a lot. And connect with Patrick in the show notes below. Until next time.